So today is day 4 of the 7-day chakra reset challenge. And today is all about the heart chakra, which I am so excited about. I mean, who doesn't love the heart, right? Who
Uh,
doesn't love love?
so good. Feelings, feelings, feelings.
Yes, exactly. And it was actually the heart that really got me into this work because of heartbreak. So really going into that part of myself and having that breakdown while I did, I guess it was about 5 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, I was able to really come back to self-love and to learn what that really meant. Yeah, I feel like I think growing up I was always seeking love external of myself. Um, and if we go back to childhood and old wounds and things like that, there were circumstances that I wasn't really able to fully embrace love. My parents were really busy and they were separated. So I was always kind of seeking things external of myself for like love, for validation. And when I got into a really serious relationship, I really gave all of myself. So when that ended and I had this preconceived notion of what love was about and about marriage and life and the timeline, and that really shattered, it was like the universe like woke me up and was like, you know, how do you fill yourself up before giving to others?
Mm.
So that's a little bit about love for me, Sean. I don't know how you feel, if you resonate with that. And I'd also love to introduce just who you are and how we met.
Yeah. um, well, yeah, talking about the heart first. Um, I think the way I got into a lot of this work and the thing that has connected me back to the heart is owning my sensitivity. Um, I like different from you. Like I grew up like in a very stable family. There was a lot of love within the family. But it was as soon as I started to like have to interact with the outside world, like when you first start going to school, when you start like realizing that you might have an identity in middle school and stuff like that, is when I felt it started, the heart start to harden a bit, just out of fear of what other people would think, and like, oh wait, other people have this view of me, do I need to project that view that they have of me back to them? Like, what's going on here? I don't know how to just like completely open up and be myself. And I think it's only been recently that I've really felt okay owning sensitivity and owning this sense that like, yes, I am paper thin and like emotions flow very easily and arise very easily, but realizing that just because you're paper thin doesn't mean you can't like still be strong and still fold into something beautiful, similar to like what you do with like origami with paper, and you can make extremely strong structures out of paper even though it's still quite brittle and quite beautiful and fragile in that way. Yeah, so that's kind of like my musings on the heart chakra there.
Yeah. I really love that analogy with the paper. That's going to sit with me.
Nice.
There's also that one with like, I don't know if you've heard the one with water, where it's also so strong that it can, withhold like dams and things, right? But then it's also so, it flows so easily that it can move through cracks as well.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Such good metaphors.
Yes.
And then like how I got into this work, I think I got into this work much more because of my head. So for context, for people who are watching, I'm a Reiki master. I also teach laughter yoga, and I do some tarot on the side as well. And I definitely got into it because of my head. And I'd want to say like 5 or 6 years ago at this point, I was finally coming to terms with, I have a lot of like anguish and a lot of like patterns going on in my behavior, and I don't really know where they're coming from, and I'm doing a really good job hiding it, and like still performing at work and like going out and having tons of fun, even if that meant being like super drunk. And so when I finally admitted to myself, like, maybe there's something bigger than just like being in your 20s going on here, as I started to near 30, that's when I started to key into this stuff. And I went to some therapists and they helped, but it wasn't really until I found Reiki and the more spiritual side of things that everything started to come together. And I think to the point of like, is it in your head? Is it in your heart? Is it in your body? Where is it? All these spiritual practices find themselves at like the crux of all of them. It's like the center of the wheel. And I think that's why it's resonated with me so much. And so I continue to use those tools for me and for clients to help them just tap into that place of feeling safe, sensitive, and just simply just feeling. Like that to me is like so much of what the heart chakra is about, is just like, just feel it all.
Ooh, yeah. I'm like getting chills just thinking and feeling and really connecting back to that part of ourselves. So what have you experienced with all of the feeling and really coming back to the heart?
Yeah. Probably just this, I almost want to say a radical notion of love, because I think it's love beyond what we typically ascribe to that word. And it's also a love that's beyond pity. I think that using pity as a first step to get to universal love, like acknowledging someone else's situation, acknowledging the tough points of their life, acknowledging the tough situation they might currently be in, is a great way to like start to crack through that. But then moving beyond just realizing like, oh, I'm in a different situation from them and I can feel for them, into, oh, you are a human and I am a human, and I realize we're all just humans in this like funny collective dream we're having, just opens it all up so much, to the point where like sometimes if I even catch myself on a day feeling particularly down or particularly disconnected, like on the subway, I'll sit there and be like, oh, let me make sure I like take a point to like look at every person and like acknowledge, and at least for myself, who knows what's going on in their head, that they are a person and we are all in this thing together. I think that's like the biggest thing that I've had, the biggest kind of like breakthrough I've had. And it's tough. Like, it's definitely on the moments where you're like, I'm smashed up against 20 people in the subway.
Yeah.
And I don't like it. But like, is there a way that I can say like, oh, we're all smashed in this together?
Yeah. Oh my God, that's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
What about you?
I feel like that subway analogy is so beautiful, because I honestly, like, I feel like in New York, we can get so caught up with blocking things out, even though the city is so dense and we're all like on top of each other, literally like in buildings and high rises, and like crammed in the subway. And taking those moments, like you mentioned, to really acknowledge people and know that we are all having this human experience. I try to do more of that as well. But like you said, sometimes I can catch myself like, okay, forgetting that. And I'm just kind of going from A to B and not watching the world and what's around me. So I think for me, compassion has always been a driving force in my life. And just to give a little backstory, my mother actually, when she was young, wasn't able to, this was before she had me, she wasn't able to speak for a while and talk. And this was in her younger teens, I think, maybe right before then. And then she actually became, in Chinese, I don't know the exact word in English, but kind of paid her homage to Guan Yin, which is the Bodhisattva of compassion in Hinduism. And in Buddhism, you'll see her in, she's a lady in the white garb, and she sits on a lotus flower. She usually has two like girls next to her. And she's the goddess of compassion. And so my mom has an altar for her in our home. And I feel like she's always been this like guiding spirit in my life. And so living with that in mind and coming back to my spiritual self now in this time in my life, I've realized how much it's impacted me and how I see other people and how I see the world. And just understanding, like you said, that we're all human, just having this experience that at the end of the day, we're all so connected. And there's certain things in the human experience that really try to separate us. And I think like just connecting with like you and just other people who are more aware and conscious of how connected we all are really helps us to really rise on a collective level. And so I feel like that's really part of my mission in this lifetime. And how it transpires, I'm not sure. I think I'm on the right path. I think there's many paths.
I think you definitely are.
So yeah, that's really like my story and how I really relate to coming back to the heart and compassion and empathy. Hey guys, if you guys have any questions or you'd like us to talk about anything, or if you have any shares of your own about heart and love and compassion and all of the beautiful things, please share with us. Wow, Don says your heart has about 40,000 neurons. It's a little brain. Brain and heart are connected. So beautiful.
Beautiful.
Yes. And I have my celery juice. It's also green. So tell us about your work and where you're heading, like what you're up to in the world.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing that I'm doing right now is teaching laughter yoga, laughter work, laughter classes, whatever you want to call it, around New York City. I may possibly be teaching some other cities within this year, which would be very exciting, but stay tuned for that. And I think on the theme of the heart chakra, that's been one of the tools that I can use very, very easily, and I think everyone can use very easily, just to open up and feel that growth, that love, that life. So for those who don't know, like laughter yoga is basically a workshop or class with other people where you laugh unconditionally. So there's going to be no jokes. There's going to be no prompts. No one's getting up and doing stand-up or anything like that. It's just these silly games that you do to kind of connect back to that childlike play, which very fittingly, like, I feel like when we're all children, our hearts are open just genuinely and haven't been calcified by the world yet. So returning to that state is always very, very beautiful. Yeah, and I'm just kind of following that road further. And like, Christine, like you were there actually the first time I ever led a class.
At our Reiki Masters last January.
Yeah. like went in just really wanting to focus on like my Reiki practice at the time, which I'm still also doing. It's not like I've given it up or anything. And our teacher was like, Sean, do you want to just lead this? And I was terrified. But it just struck me so, it struck a chord, and it was so easy for me to do it that's I was like, oh, this is something new I can bring to this space. I don't know what your experiences with the laughter and stuff like that was like. And
oh my gosh. So yeah, so Sean and I, we met at our Reiki Masters Attunement retreat in Oaxaca, Mazunte in Mexico, with Lisa and Maha Rose. And it was, I think, all of our first times there. And it was such a beautiful, beautiful experience. The place was beautiful. The people were beautiful. Like, the food was amazing. And when Sean taught laughter yoga, it was my first time experiencing that.
Oh, it was?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And I loved it. And I'm going back this Thursday, tomorrow. Yes.
Yeah.
And it's really, really a lot of fun. And I'm really glad you mentioned that it's unconditional laughter, which is really, I love it. The alignment, like we didn't even choose today because it was heart, but you landed on heart chakra, and it's just like perfect.
The universe probably chose it.
Absolutely. Yes. And it's like unconditional, like laughter and joy and love, and just being able to have the space that you held for that. Whew, it's opening me up right now.
Oh,
thank you.
I love it. It's such a simple and powerful tool. I think what's funny too is like the first time you hear about it, you're like, this is a load of nonsense. Like, you're like, I don't know how this is going to work. And then everyone's first experience with it is just like, what just happened?
It's like, it's infectious, right?
Yeah.
Laughter is infectious.
Yeah.
And once you get started, it's like, wow. Ooh, yeah. It takes you on a ride.
Yes, for sure. A lovely heart ride back to yourself.
So yeah, with that, laughter yoga is, I would say, one of the really, really good tools that you can actually use to open up your heart if there's some blockage there. And what about the symptoms that of a, like, maybe a more like dense or weaker heart chakra? What would you say are?
Yeah. I'd say just like a numbness, almost. A numbness. There's probably like weird resonance going on with other chakras as well. Like, immediately when I think about a dense heart chakra, I think of other symptoms that would happen in like the third eye at the same time. Probably just feeling disconnected, wanting to be alone, but like not in like the fun way. As someone who's an introvert, I do love being alone. But when you're like, oh, I like can't be around people, like that it almost feels oppressive to be around people, would probably be pretty dense. And then, like, I think one thing that I might share that I feel gets misconstrued a lot is a sense of sorrow, or a sense of just feeling low emotionally, might lead to a dense heart chakra. Whereas I just think those are like the heart chakra just starting to like open up. Like, you're starting to let yourself feel it all. And so that's more like, it's like peeking through the door. Like, you're a little dense, but like your body and your energy is like trying to show you the way out, is like through through this mire of what you're feeling at the moment.
Okay, totally. So just to kind of clarify that, is being too overly like emotional, you think would be actually opening yourself up to coming back to the heart?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, I actually love the water metaphor you used before. Like sometimes being very, very overly emotional is just like the dam finally letting loose. And it needs to let loose in order to like stabilize again and be flat water. But sometimes it's necessary.
Totally. Yeah, I really love that. What about, I'd say like, how about forgiveness and being able to like grieve or cope with something?
Yeah. I'd say those are lovely, lovely tools for getting in there and seeing what's going on. Yeah. As someone who thinks a lot about grief, I think it is one of the most powerful human experiences we can have, to the point where it can be a little scary. But again, I think it just resonates in that heart center even more if you let it.
It's such a process.
Yeah.
Like sometimes if we don't let ourselves fully feel it, like you mentioned, right? Just letting it out, letting that dam fall. I've personally experienced this. It will come up again in some other way. It's going to creep back up.
Yep.
So why not just feel it all?
Yep. That water will find a different thing to flow down if you don't let it out the way it wants to go.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions or anything that you'd like us to chat about before we close today?
I have a question for you, Christine, actually.
Sure.
What other tools do you use to open up your heart?
It's a good question. So, really find that when we imagine the other person and we see the other person just as you would like your mother or a child, and really hold them in that space and see yourself in them as well. I think it goes back to compassion for me, and compassion to me is different than empathy. It's always been different for me, because I feel like empathy, you can feel for someone and feel kind of almost like sorry for what they're going through, but not completely understand and put yourself in their situation and how they might feel. So when we're able to see them as a child, see the other person as yourself, being a mirror reflected back to you, then we start to soften our heart and let go of the thoughts in our mind, in our logical brain, and really open up and connect with them on that level.
I love that. And I feel like you just put more eloquently what I was trying to say at the beginning about like using sympathy and empathy as a doorway to eventually get to compassion, as you put it.
Thank you, Sean. Any last notes for us?
Well, should we let people know that soon we will be leading a Reiki 1 workshop / maybe retreat together?
Yes! That'd be
So stay
so
tuned for that.
Yes. Hopefully this spring or summer.
Yeah.
Let's do
Spring
it.
could be fun when everything's like coming back to life and things are blooming again.
Yes. It's an exciting time. Hi, Fred. Do you have any questions for us, David, Fred, um, Lee? If not, we will let Sean go on with the day. And I will see you tomorrow at your laughter yoga.
Yes, I'll see you tomorrow at Maha Rose.
Yes. Yay.
All right.
All right.
Good chatting.
Bye. Yes. Have a good day. Love you.
Love you too.